Mate, $12 million portfolio in just over 6 years. You don't waste time, do you, Rohit?
Yeah, I don't. I'm still looking for the next one.
Rapid growth of building, 6 of the properties into your portfolio within 12 months. But what was it that really lit the spark to start going, I'm going to buy more of these?
A house which was right next to us had got sold at $250,000 more than what we paid. So that was an eye-opener for me. I was spending many days in the week reading so much content.
I want to ask you a little bit more about the accident and how that really changed things for you.
I was in a very negative mental state. But then this accident gave me a perspective that just gave me the courage to take some more risk.
Coming from India, you're not the typical rags to riches story. You were the doing well to I can do better. You left a comfortable life, giving your son a kiss goodbye, and you sacrificed.
I never knew that I'll be coming this far, but again, I don't know how far I'll be going.
If you and I sit in front of each other in 5 years' time, what do you reckon we're going to be talking about?
In the next 2 to 3 years, my aim is...
My name's Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast, and this episode is powered by Full Circle Finance, Property Developer Network, InvestorKit, Suburbs Finder, and Property Strats. More about our amazing show sponsors in the show notes below. But right now, let's get into this episode with Rohit Gehlot. Mate, $12 million portfolio in just over 6 years. You don't waste time, do you, Rohit?
Yeah, I don't. I'm still looking for the next one.
Yeah, I bet you are. You and I were having a coffee just before, talking about the next deal,
Yep.
But there's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to unpack with your story today, mate. You've come here from India, the story of even leaving your family for a little bit, but then them coming over, rapid growth of building, 6 of the properties into your portfolio within 12 months, was it?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, and then an accident which changed everything for you. There's a lot to unpack here, man. But is there anything you actually want to set the stage with maybe before I start asking you a whole bunch of questions and we start diving into all the detail?
No, let's get into it. Yeah.
Done, man. Look, I want to actually start talking really about the juicy stuff straight away. Let's jump into the rapid growth of 6 properties in 12 months. If we can start going through this in a way of where are you buying these? How are you getting the deposits? And then let's go back and start unpacking a bit more of your story. But I know one of the comments I'll always see when we're talking about people's stories is kind of get into the meat and veg straight away. Actually, meat and veg? Meat and potatoes. Meat and potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
So
Meat and potatoes, yeah.
So take me back to 2021 of the first purchase in this rapid succession of acquisitions, because it wasn't actually the first purchase overall though, was it?
Yeah, it was third.
Number 3. Okay.
Number 3, yeah.
So take me back to, I think it was July 2021 you said, sort of mid 2021?
Yeah, that is correct.
All right, talk me through deposit, what you're earning at the time, income, all the details, man.
Yeah, sure. So let me refresh my memory. So July 2021, I had my wife employed very closer to minimal wages for 6 months now. So in July, as soon as I got my 2 salary slips, that made me eligible to get more mortgage because previous 2 purchases, I finished my borrowing capacity. So this gave me an uplift. So my broker basically worked with NAB at the time, and NAB worked out based on the projection on how much this income is going to be for the whole year. Gave me the borrowing capacity to be able to make this purchase.
Do you mind opening that up a little bit more? So what your broker was basically saying that because your wife wasn't working previously, but then if that changed around, this was one of the stepping stones to unlock the next purchase?
That is correct, yeah. So I was a single earner throughout since the time we got married. So she never worked back in India, never worked here after coming. So in January 2021, when I bought my property number 2, I finished my borrowing capacity. So a broker that I was working with at the time told me that if you can get your wife employed even on very closer to minimal wages, that income, if and that continues for next 6 months. So at the start of the financial year, you can take the first 2 pay slips and do a projection for the whole year. And then you can actually use that as an additional income for the family to be able to service the loan.
Gotcha.
Because this is an additional income, you're already factored in all the HEM expenses. The household expenses has already been factored in your income. So that additional income, even if it is not great, will give you a good additional uplift.
All right. So your wife wasn't working before in India, didn't work before now. Was she on board with this? Are you guys both on the same page? It's cool, whatever it takes? Or was this a little bit of took a bit of convincing? She wasn't keen or?
She never resisted, honestly, because she was not doing it for the sake of buying property, but she's always there to support me. So I told that this will be giving us a required borrowing capacity, and she was onboarded. There wasn't no struggle.
Awesome. And this is when you're a lender, or what are you doing at the time?
I was working at CommBank at the time. So January 2021, I was working there as a delivery lead.
What's a delivery lead?
Delivery lead is basically a team lead, similar to team lead. So I was part of the chief data and analytics office. There were a team of data engineers. At the time, I was managing a team of data engineers and other engineers who were managing data platforms.
How many people you reckon?
7, 8?
7 or 8.
Not many, yeah.
Okay. So you got some managerial skills.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
I would say.
I think you're being modest, but all right. So what kind of a deposit are you putting down for this rental? Because this is rental number 3, but the first in like this quick succession of acquisition.
See, I paid 20% for that. And
20%.
This 20% came from my past 2 purchases. So the property number 1 has actually had a very decent uplift in the value. So I took, I don't remember the exact number, but I think majority of the deposit came from the property number 1 and some deposit from my purchase number 2, which was in Brisbane.
And property number 1 was only in 2019, wasn't it? It wasn't like you sat on a PPR for 20 years or anything.
It was 2 years before that. Yeah.
I got to ask as well, and I'm probably going to bounce around a little bit, but what was it that really lit the spark to start going, I'm going to buy more of these and I'm going to keep doing this? Was it a book? Was it a podcast? Was it a conversation with a person? Like, where'd it come from?
It started with COVID. So after COVID, property market started shifting, right? So we were seeing interest rate cuts and COVID just elevated the pace of interest rate cuts. So there were more interest rate cuts in succession. A house which was right next to us, which was sold 6 months or 8 months after we bought this property in February or March 2020, and it got sold at 250,000 more than what we paid. So that was an eye opener for me. So I never knew that real estate here a game changer for you. So that actually gave me a bit of a perspective. And then after that, I started educating myself through YouTube content. I borrowed some books from the library nearby. And then I think major of my learning came from propertychat.com.au.
What book was the biggest one?
It was 135 properties in something.
Steve McKnight?
Yes, that is correct. Yes. And then there was another book which was my 4-year-old. I don't remember the exact title, but my 4-year-old property investor or millionaire, something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're basically getting your hands on education left, right and center. Wherever you can.
Yeah.
You've looked at a huge uplift in price and you're going, wait a second.
Yeah.
There's something to this. Let's learn more.
Yeah. And then propertychat.com, I somehow stumbled upon to that, and then I created my account, and I've been a significant contributor in 2020, and that was my learning. So I was really learning, because see, when you don't have borrowing capacity, I was told by my existing broker at the time that you can't borrow anything. So when you have nothing to do other than learning, so and that reminds me a quote from Les Brown where he says that it's better to be prepared and not have an opportunity than having an opportunity and not being prepared. So I was not having any opportunity at the time, but I was just getting prepared and I couldn't think of that at that point in time. But now looking back and connecting my dots, I can see it very clearly. Like, I think I was getting educated a lot, and then it was just the interest, right? So I was spending probably until midnight on many days in the week, until midnight on Property Chat, and like reading so much content there, and then contributing, asking questions. And then I started researching about Brisbane, got to certain pockets, but again, the only thing that I was lacking was money.
Tell me more about this purchase then. So you got your deposit, 20%. What were you earning at the time then?
From my rough memory, it was around 155 or 160K.
150. Okay. So
160.
Good money, but you're not shooting the lights out with like 300-400 grand a year or anything crazy.
Nah,
okay.
It was 160, this whole earner. But then this time when I made this Huntingdale purchase, my wife income, which was around 45-50K for the whole year.
So it brought you guys up to around the 200-ish mark together.
200 to 110, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And what did you pay for it?
I paid $310,000.
$310,000. And where was this?
It is in Huntingdale.
Huntingdale. And why Huntingdale?
Why Huntingdale? This is interesting. So I started researching again. Property Chat was again, I would say, a bit of a contributor there. I was not looking at any data metrics back in the days. But see, back in 2021, the whole of Perth made sense, right? And then when I started looking at properties, I started this Property Chat. I narrowed down to some suburbs in the south. And these suburbs were Huntingdale, Thornley, and I was also looking at Rockingham region, but I just skipped that because of its distance from the CBD. I chose Huntingdale because owner occupancy was higher. That is what I was focusing on, and also the proximity.
For anyone that's a little bit newer, why is that important?
Owner occupancy is important because for several reasons. First thing, area having a higher owner occupancy means that area is much more desirable because more and more people are committing to mortgages to be living there and they are not going on rentals. The second benefit, I think, is because owner occupancy is higher, the rental supply is lower, which means even if the renter wants to go there, they don't have many options, which can create an upward pressure on the rentals.
Supply and demand.
Yeah. So say, for example, if a suburb has got 20% renters and 80% owners, if you end up buying an investment property there is very limited stock because the owner occupancy is higher. Owner occupants also maintain their home much nicer in comparison to region where the tenancy, there are more tenants, right? So,
and what kind of yield are you getting off the bat from that? Because I know that your yield on purchase now is insane, but what was it at the time?
The rental appraisal came at 380.
Okay. So you're paying 310, getting 380. So already it's like a 6-ish% yield. I think.
Somewhere around that.
Yeah.
And I think back in the days, the interest rates were also not high. So
yeah, they were super low then.
That is correct.
Good days.
Would have been a positive.
Yeah.
Would have been a positive cash flow that time.
Talk to me about how that actually segued into the next rental and how quickly that happened.
Oh, so I was again looking in the same suburbs in the neighborhood, and as soon as my mortgage broker rang me and congratulated me that I got the full unconditional approval on this, I then asked him in the same call that how much more can I borrow? And then he said, man, I'll probably take a couple of hours before I get back to you. And then he rang me that evening telling, man, you can probably get up to a 400K purchase price again, 400, 450, somewhere around that, which then led me to the hunt for the next one.
Okay, so you're looking at like, you've got another 400K in borrowing capacity, but we're only at like rental number 2 and you're about to get 6 in this time frame.
Yeah.
You're pulling out a few tricks along the way to continue after this, because if you've got 400 up your sleeve, are you just only using like a fraction of that and getting something really low value, or how's this coming together?
I was never thinking about 2 properties at any given point, right? I was just looking for my next one. So I think at this stage, the education that I've got now, so I might be wanting to split my existing borrowing capacity. But at the time, I was just looking at one. And as soon as I get that approval for the next one, as I was told that I can go borrow maybe from 400 to 450, I ended up buying another property in the next one, signing up a contract in August for this property in Thornley. And then again, once I got the unconditional approval, then I exactly did the same. And because I think from my rough memory, the interest rates were also declining at the time. And these properties, because their cash flows were decent, that was also helping us in expanding my borrowing capacity. That is what I think would have been the reason.
I think 2021, they were already at like whatever it was, 0.1%, or basically
cash
nil.
Rate,
the cash rate. Okay. So the cash rate is obviously helping out because the interest rates are so low. So your serviceability is looking great. They're cash flow positive, like pretty much everything that you're getting.
Yeah.
Why are you so confident to load yourself up with so much debt and just go like, let's keep doing this, when so many people are running away from the market then?
See, I have got a very, I think, clear understanding. Like, I really don't care about the amount of debt since day one. All I care about is the debt which is sitting on me, where I have got the liability to pay. That is a painful debt. If I've got a debt, say, and if I've got a debt where the tenant is paying for most of it, then I'm really not concerned. I think the bigger the debt, the more it is, because if I just leave that debt on P&I for 30 years, the bigger debt I have, the bigger portfolio I'll be left with in 30 years time. So it's a very similar analogy, right? How long does it take for shirt to get dry? If it takes a single shirt to get dry in 3 hours, 100 shirts also take exactly whatever time frame the single shirt takes, right? So whether you have got $1 million debt or $100 million debt, or are financed for 30 years time frame, right? So if you have got a tenant who is paying for the P&I and it's not costing you anything to hold, you want your debt to be as large as possible, because by the end of 30-year period, you don't want to be in a position where you had $1 million debt, but it is paid off by the tenant. Rather, you would be looking at $100 million debt, which has been paid by the tenant, and now you have got $100 million worth of assets. So I always had that as long as debt is not paid by you, you're not working hard to pay for it, I think that's a good debt.
Now, I want to say this is a very careful subject, because this is not financial advice. Please seek independent professional financial advice. But rewind what Rohit just said, because there is so much wisdom in this. It's something that took me a very long time to actually figure out. It's like if you want to buy 5 properties in 10 years, it's like, okay, cool. I'll buy like 1 property every like 2 or 3 years. And it's like, no. Like it's about stacking that forward. And whilst I know everyone's situation is different, not everyone can buy like multiple in a year. You've got to play the hand that you dealt and do the best you can. But if you have the ability to buy more quicker and then just do nothing for 10 years.
That is correct,
You are better off doing that.
100%. In acquisition phase, you want to go as hard as possible, as fast as possible within your financial means. And then you want these properties to be given enough time for them to grow. Yeah, you rightly said, like if you're buying 5 properties in 10 years and you're buying 1 every 2 years, then you have not given any time to the last property or the second last property for it to grow.
Some things just take time. You know what it reminds me of? I quote Warren Buffett all the time, but he's got a wonderful quote. You can't make a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant.
That is correct. Yeah, so true. You need to give it time.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so your confidence is really coming from, I can see that I'm not paying the debt, even though technically when you're the investor, we're all still on the hook for the debt, but the tenant is the one that is really servicing the mortgages.
That is correct.
That's giving you a real base of like, I'm good.
Yeah, that is giving me a confidence to keep going. going.
All right. So now when you're going to the next purchases, are you using equity for all of these? Is it a bit of cash savings, a mixture? How is it getting funded?
It was, I think, a mixture, but my cash savings were not great at the time, right? So like for my purchase, say for example, if I need 20% and that 20% is equating to $80,000, I might have contributed 5-10K. That is all I would have contributed in terms of the cash savings, right? Majority of that was from my principal place of residence back in the day.
So you're not like Mr. Super Saver, like you're not packing the sandwiches for lunch or anything like that?
We were spending very, very minimal money. Like we were not going out for lunches or dinners, like probably once every 6 months or 12 months, we might have had a dinner outside.
Yep.
And like until the last 2 years, we have been a bit more frequent outside. But again, I think until I was in my working job, because I was the only sole earner, right? And when you're rolling on to the debts and then the interest rate starts rising, that never gave us that flexibility or confidence to just spend money lavishly.
How do you deal with the pressure? Because there's a bit of pressure with that. You've got the debt side of things, especially if your wife was only working for a little bit, you're the sole income earner of the house. I'm sure there's plenty of men and women right now probably listening going, I can relate to that.
Yeah, that is correct. See, I think the pressure started building up when the interest rate started rising, right? And then I got from 2.5%, 3% from the lenders going to 6% and over. So yeah, by the time I was done with the 6 acquisitions in 12 months time, that was the time the interest rates were rising. So yeah.
So before the rates rose, because I still remember, I think it was the first rate, I was actually on holiday in Bali. And I remember this because it was all like, it's not going to move until 2023, 24. And then all of a sudden that started happening a lot. Like, you obviously would have been positively geared to begin with, then negatively geared after all of the rises happened. What really changed with your cash flow? How positive were you to how negative were you after the changes?
Yeah, see, I'm not done the calculations, but roughly speaking, I might be 10-15 grand positive with these 6 purchases. Like if the rate would have stayed at 2.5-3%, but then might have gone to maybe 20K roughly negative. But also during this time when the interest rates were rising, I've seen the rental growth as well. So which has actually reduced the pain of just the expenses, right? So the income was also rising, income has not doubled, honestly. So yeah, a positive portfolio has actually turned negative, but I think 15-20K negative for the whole year was still sustainable for me.
So none of this was, I mean, like your first purchase, like 310 and it's renting out for 380. None of it was like negatively geared to start with, or it's like a 4% yield to begin with. You're buying stuff that's like 6 and 7% yield.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. What was the next one, the next purchase? How much would that cost?
So the next purchase, which I did in August, I signed up the contract in August, was bought at $400,000.
400,000. And where was that?
It was in Thornley, the suburb next to Huntingdale. Yep. And this property at the time had the rental appraisal of $450 per week.
$450 per week, and you're buying it for $400,000. All right. So you're committing to Perth this stage. There was a lot of people running away though.
That is correct. Yeah.
Again, coming back to the confidence side of things, and especially being like a newer investor, why are you like, no, I'm doubling down?
Yeah, see, I think it's a common investing principle which I've always lived by myself. So I always go counter-cyclical. When everyone is investing in a market, there's an inflated demand there. So I try to stay away. So say, for example, if you commit me a market X today, but there is a lot of demand from investors, buyers, agents, and every other professional who's wanting to invest there, I try to stay away even if I'm looking at very, very promising growth. The reason is because we have to first overpay. I don't want to be competing. So I would rather pick a market which has got strong growth fundamentals and the boom is yet to begin, might have not grown for the last 5, 7, 10 years. So as long as the rental is, like I was not targeting short-term capital growth back in the day. So I was a bit too early, I think, for Perth. In 2022, it started shifting quite drastically, or maybe around towards the end of 2022, I would say. But my intention there was because it has not risen for the last, or though it has corrected. So I was paying lower than what someone would have paid in 2015. So it made me complete sense to me. Like 6, 7 years later, I'm buying a property at 310, where I would have paid 400 plus for that property if I would have bought that in 2014, 2015.
So you're a value investor.
I didn't know when, but I just knew that it was going to go back where it was and will exceed that amount. So yeah, it was just a matter of time.
I've got to ask then, how does the next rental come about? So the conversation with your broker is, okay, I think I can get you another like 400 grand, Rohit.
That is correct.
You're spending 400 grand, and then what? You're back on the phone to him again. You're like, hey, what was his name?
His name was Alok. Yeah.
Alok?
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, Alok, I need more money again.
That is correct.
How is that conversation going down?
No, after the second one, once we got the formal approval, I asked him, man, how much can I borrow? And he told me again, similar similar number. Like as long as your rental is decent enough, around
Yep.
450, 500 mark, you should be able to get closer to 400, 415, something like that.
So are you moving up to like second tier and third tier lenders at this stage?
Not yet. So I was fortunate enough to continue with the same lender. So I think to begin with, the first purchase which we did in July probably had a little bit more borrowing capacity, but then strong rentals, decreasing interest rate just worked in the favor.
Got it. Okay. So you're just basically piling on. And what was the next purchase? How much?
The next purchase was in September, as soon as I got the confirmation from the broker. So he was able to, and this time I was educated. I told him, man, I want to be paying only 12% and now we'll pay the LMI. But at this time, I was about to complete 2 years in CommBank as a permanent employee. So I got a deal from CommBank where I only paid 10% without LMI. So I ended up signing up a contract in September at $412,000, $412,500 to be specific.
$412,500. Okay. And what's that one renting for?
At the moment, the rents are quite high. They're currently rented at $650, but the time when I bought that property, it was rented at appraisal was $450.
450. Okay. So again, so
yeah.
5 or 6-ish% yield.
That
So
is
more
correct.
like 5-ish. Yeah. Gotcha. This is actually a pretty good perk as well that not many people know about. Like if you're working in the banks, then a lot of the time you can actually do like a 90-10 LVR without any kind of LMI. So you took full advantage of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah.
I've got to ask right here, like 3 purchases in, you already told 400 before, now you're doing another 400. Like how are you not hitting a brick wall yet? Because your income's staying the same, yeah?
That is correct. Yes. I kind of did. The broker actually told me, man, now you are only having probably 350K for borrowing capacity left. So you need to be cautious with that because you really can't keep doing this all in personal name. So I had to then pause. We were going with NAB at the time. So he said that we could probably stretch to another lender and get you another 50 to 100K, which might stretch you to maybe another 400, but this is going to be your last purchase.
Okay. And
which
you,
basically
I'm assuming, didn't like the sound of that?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So I just then thought, man, my chapter looks like of investing until at this point seems closed.
How are you not happy with this though? Because this is what I got to say. Like obviously you and I have got similar personalities in the sense of growth mindset, push.
Yeah.
Most people would be looking at this stage, you've got 5 properties all up,
Yeah.
but you're looking at it as like, oh, it's over. This is terrible. Like there's a negative feeling. Why?
Yeah. Since day one until this point, I've got the same attitude. I'm always looking for the next one. That's it. So I was again then at 5, like I was not looking backwards on how much I acquired. I'm just thinking, how can I get my 6th? So I was probably trying to find a solution to that puzzle.
So it's always about moving forward, always about progressing.
That is correct. The next one.
And what was the solution? How'd you keep going?
I was then I don't know how I got introduced to another broker. I don't remember that now, but I had a strategy call with a broker. I remember attending that from my CommBank office in a meeting room. And this Zoom call with the broker in November was a game changer for me. So this broker introduced me to family trust structures on how they can actually expand your borrowing capacity. I did know nothing about that until that point. So he told me using family trust structures, there is a way how you can continue to borrow more than your current limitation.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because this is a subject that we've gone into a lot of detail with, I know, like a few other people beforehand, but without going into all of the detail, how does it help you for someone that's a little bit newer?
Yeah, using family trust structures, there are lenders out there. Again, not every lender does it, but there are specific lenders. Like if you stick to them, you don't finish your borrowing capacity. You can kind of retain your borrowing capacity. There's a limit to everything, right? But I think you would be able to expand a lot more than what your current borrowing capacity looks like. So you were buying under personal names, yeah.
So from the first broker saying, okay, you've got to take a knee after this.
Yeah.
What did your borrowing capacity look like afterwards, after you had this call?
Yeah, after this call, see, the borrowing capacity didn't change. The borrowing capacity remained the same. But what it meant is that even if I would have consumed that under a trust, I can still borrow the same amount as long as I'm not buying under the same trust, or an expert broker can actually educate people on that. But it's more to do with you being the guarantor on the corporate trustee and then using those strategies. Those asset and liabilities can, by some lenders, be ignored.
I feel like we're going to get comments on this because this is a very complex subject to dive into.
I don't want to get into that, honestly. Yeah.
But essentially, by starting to use structures in the right way, building your expert team to a level of, and it sounds like the first broker was great, but then their expertise kind of capped out at this level. Yeah. So because you wanted to keep going, you needed to find someone that was at that next level.
That is correct. So, and that is what I always keep saying. If a broker says no, it means he can't get you a loan. It doesn't mean that you can't get a loan. Find a new one, someone who is much more skilled in handling complex situations. Yeah.
A lot of the time in this, no doesn't mean no. No means I don't know.
That is correct. Yeah.
Just need to keep going.
Yeah.
Got it. And so what was purchase number 4 in this phase?
Purchase number 4 was a property in Mackay. I bought this property at $292,000 under a trust structure. So 92 in a suburb called Mount Pleasant in Mackay.
Is it super pleasant there?
It is. It is outside of flood. See, in Mackay, if you are buying something outside of flood zone, that is pleasant.
Okay. And what's that renting for? 292?
Today, see, at the time when I bought that property, it was rented at 450. Today, it's at 600.
That's a massive yield at the front, like at the front end. So you're still okay.
I think I would be touching maybe 10% now.
Yeah, man. I can see why
price. Yeah.
You basically went from positive to only a little bit negative because you're buying like super high yielding properties.
Yeah.
And now, was this intent as well? Like, are you looking at this from like a protection point of view from cash flow, or because you're still a little bit newer, was this just you look back on it now and you're like, oh, that's good that I did that?
I always did that purposefully, right? I wanted to have my properties a decent cash flow so that I can continue on my journey, because I didn't have too much of a surplus income, which can pay for the shortfalls, right? Mm-hmm. So I need to be very mindful of what cash flow position looks like. So even if there was a property which is very promising in terms of capital growth, but was heavily negatively, I could not afford to buy that. So I need to be cautious. I need to be cautious what my cash flow looks like after the purchase. It may not be positive today or even back in the day, but as long as it's not too negative, I can sustain that. And that was the goal.
So the idea of like super blue chip, low yielding, but the best location, that was never a part of the strategy for you?
Yeah, I would probably buy one of them and then just end my story there.
Yeah, that'd be a very different story.
Yeah, that would definitely be a very different story.
Because what are you sitting at now? It's 12 million?
Yeah, it should be touching probably closer to 13 by the end of the year.
Okay.
It's moving because all these properties are invested in the markets which are still rising. Then I'm also doing construction, which upon finishing will be adding a lot more cash flow as well as some equity uplift there. And then there is 1:2 lot subdivision, which is about to complete in the final stages. That will also be giving me an equity uplift. So the numbers are moving.
And I'd like to talk to you about that. But can we just round out these last 2 purchases? And then I want to ask you a little bit more about the accident and how that really changed things for you. But before I do, these last 2 purchases, whereabouts are they? Income staying the same? How much are you paying? What kind of deposits are you using?
At this time, for my property number 4 in this stint of 6 purchases, so I paid 12% plus LMI. By this time, I got educated that I need to be paying only 12% regardless of how much deposit. I remember withdrawing some equity at that point in time. So I had money to pay 20%, but then I just started paying 12% plus LMI. Mm-hmm. So my Mackay property was bought at 12% plus LMI. Then in May and June, I ended up buying 2 more properties in Townsville. And the first property in Townsville, which was bought in May, was bought under the same trust in which we have bought this Mackay property. But then the second property, which was settled in June, I think they were bought in April and May and settled in May and June. So the second property was bought under a different trust structures because I could not borrow in the same trust. So I had to actually open a new trust to be able to continue to borrow.
Got it. And so how many have you opened up then since? Like you've got sort of 3 or 4 of them now, or with like
I've just got 2.
Just got the 2?
Them, yeah.
Gotcha. So rentals 5 and 6, where were they?
Rentals of 5 and 6. Okay, so this property which settled in May 2022, so 5th property in this journey of 6, was a house and a granny. So it was built in 2015. And now when I'm looking back, it turned out to be the only house in the whole suburb which has got a house and a granny built. So all I need to spend is around $3,000 to put a fence in between. And this property, immediately once I settled, I got the whole property rented at $700 per week. $450 for the front home, $250 for the granny.
Why did that not sell for more? Was the granny in like terrible condition? Or?
No, it was brand new. Like it was just the market. See, I don't think it was the property which was the reason. It was just the market. Back in 2022, Townsville is a market. It was a dead market at the time. It hasn't risen for the last 10, 12 years. It has not performed at all, which is very deterrent for many investors, which I think is by itself a very good leading indicator for you. I have never seen any market being flat for 15, 20 years. So if something has not risen for 12, 13 years, the likelihood of it rising in the next few by itself, again, I'm not saying this is the only sole criteria. You need to be looking at certain other parameters. But yeah, if the economy is good and has not really moved, then and the rentals are good enough for you to hold the asset comfortably, then yeah.
And it's killed it now. Where do you think the next Townsville is now? Like, and we're recording this kind of later in 2025.
That is correct.
Is there somewhere you've got your eye on that's like, okay, this is really showing promise?
Yeah, I think, Melbourne, I think, is a no-brainer for everyone because Melbourne has been in one of the leading cities. Like it's very comparable to Sydney, right? But and also the earning capacity in Melbourne is very similar to people in Sydney. But I think Sydney is probably 2.5 times, like comparing the equivalent suburbs based on distance and the demographics. I think Sydney is sitting at 2.5 times. So for anyone who's a working professional, it makes complete sense for them, rather than taking a 2 million mortgage and get something 50 kilometers from the city, get the same income in Melbourne and buy something for $800,000, right? It makes complete sense. So I think affordability pushes people to certain, like I understand there are a lot of political reasons why Melbourne hasn't moved, but political reason always prevent the growth until a certain extent. At one point, it starts making sense for everyone. And I think Melbourne, because the yields are lower, which is preventing investors to jump back in. So with the interest rate downward spiral that we are about to see, I think that is going to be a fuel in the fire for Melbourne. So yeah, I think Melbourne is a sleeping giant. You just need to be getting into the right pockets.
Pockets of the giant?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Matt, I very much agree with you. We're making a lot of content on Melbourne. Every time I think everyone's sick of hearing about Melbourne, we get more requests for more Melbourne. How about this area of Melbourne? And yeah, I can't help but think. And the reason I bring it up is because I think right now it's easy to listen to parts of Rohit's story and go, oh, of course, it was easy for that guy because he went into Townsville before it was hot and he went into this before it's hot. There's always an area that's before it's hot. And it's about understanding what that looks like now, what the current situation is, and how to make the most of it, because interest rates aren't where they used to be. But you know how many property millionaires there are now that made their money in the 2000s and the 2010s before interest rates were crazy low? There's always a different opportunity based on the situation. And
that is so correct.
It's why I'm so interested to hear more about that, man. But so rounding it out with rental number 6, man, whereabouts was it and what did you pay?
Rental number 6 was again in Townsville in a suburb called Mount Louisa. So this was a 5-bed, 2-bath, massive home. So the owner on this property has actually spent $100,000 2 years ago building, because they have to cut the Mount Louisa rocks are very common there. So they have to cut the rocks to build an infinity edge pool and a very massive deck. So he has spent $100,000 there.
You've got an investment property with an infinity pool in Townsville.
Yeah, I have. And 5-bedder.
That sounds rare.
Yes, it is. And there was a lot of value in this property. I think in the back street, people are spending $1 million just in the construction. Right behind my property, there is like, if not million, then at least $700,000-800,000 they're just spending on the build. Because from one of my bedrooms, you have got a very decent view. Like you can see half of the town, so like 8-10 kilometers, 15 kilometers of a distance.
And what'd you pick it up for?
I bought this property at $435,000.
$435,000. What's it worth now?
Should be over $700,000 easily.
Amazing. Just the pool sounds like it's probably worth that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the cost of replacing this home, I have to insure it for over $800,000. The replacement cost of the home itself is $800,000 and the land is at least worth $200,000. At $700,000, it is still much undervalued.
Yeah. Okay. So you're looking at this going, and this is something you and I were just talking about off air beforehand about Townsville. It's like, it kind of just always feels like it's like, no, it must be done. It must be done. Then you look at the numbers, it's like, no, it's still going. It's still got something.
And despite the market, like even if the market stagnates, I think individual properties, if they are still undervalued on the basis of how they have been built, where they are priced currently, especially for this particular purchase, right? I understand like even if the Townsville stops growing from here on, this property still is a lot undervalued in terms of what kind of builds we have got in the closer proximity and also what it would cost to replicate this home.
Yeah,
so
man.
There's a massive value there.
Talk to me about the accident. This sounds like this was life-changing and this wasn't like something little. Can you bring me back to the actual day it happened?
It happened on the day of my son's 7th birthday, which was exactly 5 years after I completed 5 years in the country.
Okay. Yeah. What happened?
I still remember that vividly. So I was coming back to my home after dropping a family at their place and I was just 200 meters away and there was a turn on the road and because of the turn, I couldn't see a car coming and there were cars parked on both sides. So there was only a space for a single car to go and there was a ute coming from the opposite side at a very high speed. So we hit head on. So that was a major car crash and I got a hairline fracture in my hand, but I survived. But that just changed, I think, everything since then.
I hear about this all the time when you have an experience that's just so shocking, because as much as you can go, okay, like hairline fracture in your wrist, the actual like accident injuries aren't huge. The experience of being hit by a ute head on, I'm imagining this is making you question a few things in life. Can you start kind of unpacking that train of thought and how that opened up afterwards?
I think that got me into a sort of depression. I wouldn't classify it as a depression, but I was in a very negative mental state for the next next few weeks. I think 2 to 3 weeks. And the reason for that was because I was just questioning myself, like, why has that happened? Because I just came to the country 5 years ago. I started building portfolio. Like, we were improving financially. We were getting stable, right? I bought a car, thought I would be having a better future, but this was just a sudden handbrake. So it was really shocking at the time. I couldn't understand what I could do. Like, I remember after 2.5, 3 weeks, then I started again going for morning walks, started listening back to the motivational YouTube content that I was watching earlier. And back in 2020, I got back into it. And it took me, I think, probably another week or two to at least remove that negative mental state that I had. Now, looking back and connecting the dots, I can clearly see that it has really happened for a reason. And I would say that was a blessing in disguise. If that would not have ever happened, I would have still be stuck in my job where I was not satisfied because I think I was just lacking purpose in what I was doing in corporate. This has actually given me the courage. At this stage, understand, like until June 2022, when I bought these properties, the interest rate has risen. So my financial pain has increased, right? And I was tied to my job, much more closer because of the additional dependency on me to be able to sustain these assets. Sustain these assets, right? So I was always fearful, like if I leave my job or do something else. I understand the job was not satisfying, but I didn't have any other option. And at this stage, I always thought, like, if I didn't have a job, I could not pay the mortgages. I could not sustain, like, even for our household expenses.
So you feel trapped?
I thought I was trapped. But then this accident gave me a perspective. The perspective that it gave me is I could have been dead at this point. So I was always fearful of who would be paying the mortgages. But if I would have been dead, my mortgages would not have been paid anyway. So I think this gave me a very different perspective. And that has actually changed things. So I think that just gave me the courage to take some more risk. And by this time, what has happened is for my last 6 purchases, when I was doing, and I was talking to my friends all the time, and they were aware that I never hide anything from anyone. So I'm telling transparently where I bought, what prices I bought. And even with my friends, I kept telling them. And then I've helped probably 5-7 people along the way while I was buying these 6 properties. And I was negotiating for them, and I was...
So you're just enjoying it. You're like, let's do more of this.
I was really enjoying that. And on propertychat.com.au, I started contributing a lot more. Man, I've done this, I helped a friend. So I remember a comment from someone who said that what you're doing is a profession, so that's called buyer's agent, and do that. But
it's kind of like, why don't you do that as a job?
Exactly. And but I had that limiting belief. I really couldn't see myself doing it. But even if I was doing it for free, I started feeling the enjoyment. And that got me to a point where I think I started feeling the pain of my job, because then I have got 2 things to compare.
It sounds like it's giving you the purpose that you felt you were missing.
That is correct. Yes. Until that point, I didn't have anything. So I was trapped in my job. I clearly understood it was not fulfilling. It was not satisfying, but it was paying the bill, and I was required to do that. But then even though I started doing something which I am enjoying, but not getting even $1 for that, I still want to continue to do that.
I'm a big fan of the whole lemons to lemonade, because I've been in a dark place before. Anyone that's listened to the show for a little while knows about that. And I took ages. Mate, the fact that you were in it for a few weeks is commendable, because you can sit in the mud for a very long time, I think, if you're not too careful. And being able to go, hey, I'm not happy with this, it's time to change after a big life-changing event like that, and then changing it in such a positive way. The thing that impresses me about you, Rohit, you just kind of keep going. If we got time, and if you don't mind opening up a little bit about it, we're talking about a deal that you're actually putting together, I think, at the moment in a very, very clever way. And this is in Melbourne, because I agree with everything that you're saying about Melbourne being the sleeping giant. Whilst I know it's a bit of a market splitter, some people are still like, nah, stay away. Time will tell. Maybe we're wrong. But the yield is horrible. There's no getting around 100%. It. Okay. There's no like 6-7% yields like you used to be able to chase in Brisbane and Perth. You've got a clever little hack that you're putting together at the moment. Do you mind opening up this deal a little bit?
I'm just trying it for myself. So this is my first purchase where I'm buying a land and then building a house on top. I'm not a fan of that because you can get massive equity uplift by just buy and hold strategy.
So why do it then?
So it's just because of Melbourne's terrible yield, right? My property number 10th was bought in Melbourne in a suburb called Berwick, which is a blue chip suburb, very good socioeconomics. But again, the yield is killing.
How far from the city? Just roughly for another stuff. Yeah,
kilometer wise, I think it would be around 50, but that itself is a good powerhouse.
All right, so you're buying this in Berwick, so more of a nicer blue chip sort of area.
That is correct. Yeah. So I was buying Berwick. I know these properties, if I would have bought or had the borrowing capacity of buying in 2021, for this property, I would have paid over $1 million. I got this property at 885, where again, another 17,000 was knocked off because of some other issues in the property. So I got this property at 868.
What year is this roughly?
Oh, this was October 2024.
So
I settled
somewhat recently. Gotcha.
Yeah, very recent.
Yeah.
So I am super convinced that Melbourne is the play for everyone, and I want to buy more in Melbourne, but I cannot be as negatively geared as Berwick because that is going to be creating a lot of financial pressure on me.
So 860, what would that rent out for if it was just like standard as a rental?
Yeah, it is currently it's rented at 665 per week.
Okay, so the yield's pretty well. What is that, like 3.5%? Something like that?
Yeah, in threes. Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted to buy in Melbourne, but the yield was preventing me. So I made a few trips to Melbourne. I met friend who was a builder. So he was creating a dual lock himself. So I just got very interested in that. But I don't want to be building a specific dual lock because dual locks usually are cash flow plays. Yeah. So I wanted to get the best of both worlds where I'm buying a home which will be loved by an owner occupier. But till the time I'm holding the asset, I should have an additional income or the extra income that a usual house would not provide.
So how are you doing this?
Okay, so
this is the interesting part.
Yes, that is correct. So what I'm doing there is I'm building a 6-bed, 3-bath, 2-car park home. And the floor plan is in a way actually have a wall which you can remove anytime. So you just have got a wall in between. I'm taking separate approvals for that. But yeah, it's just in paperwork. So with that being completed, what will happen is that it will have a 4-2 configuration on one side and a 2-bed, 1-bath in the living area on the other.
So you're kind of building a duplex without building a duplex.
That is correct. Yeah. So at the time, say for example, if my intention is to hold this asset 10 years, I want to be comfortable while I'm holding this for 10 years. So use this as a dual lock. But tomorrow when the time comes to sell, I have got two options. If I'm getting a buyer, I'll probably seek advice from the real estate agents at the time and see what is better. So if I'm able to sell it as a dual lock, to say for example, an owner occupier who want to occupy a 4-2 and still have some kind of a rental income.
Yeah. Mum might be next door or they rent it out or whatever it is.
That is correct. Yeah. So I can just flick it to them. Or if there is a better demand or I can get better price for a 6-bed, 3-bath, I just need to be spending 5, 7, 10 grand to get that wall removed and do the patches and then sell it as a 6-bed, 3-bath, 2-car park standard home. So it's a standard home under a single roof line. It doesn't look unusual. It's just a bigger home. I think around 270, 280 square meters.
I love this play because the owner occupied side of things is really where the emotional dollars come from.
That is correct. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the cash flow side of things is what helps you to be able to actually hold and continue to grow the portfolio. So being able to have the best of both worlds potentially for like, even if your cost to change it doubles and it's like 20 grand to remove the wall, if we're talking about holding this for another 10 years, 15, but not stalling the growth of the portfolio, actually assisting it, that's awesome, man. I like this.
Yes. So that is what I'm doing. So they got the slab over, I think, a few weeks ago. So in the next 4 or 5 months, it will be completed before the end of the year.
And what do you reckon the rent's going to be?
I'm anticipating conservatively 1,000 to 1,050. I might be able to achieve 1,100 combined.
Opposed to 600 and something.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. Killing it. Love it. All right, Rohit, I know we're getting towards the pointy end of things and arguably the most important question of the entire show, but is there any final words of wisdom or anything you really want to leave everyone with today that's really resonating with your story, mate?
Yeah, see, in my case, what we have done is I have went on a shopping spree for properties, right? But then I had to pause because of the accident, then changing my career. But then in the last 6 to 12 months, I've again bought a few more properties and then I had to pause now again. So my recommendation to anyone is like who is wanting to acquire properties or build a portfolio, understand that your acquisition phase doesn't need to be a single phase. Once you are done acquiring properties and say, for example, you're maxed out on your borrowing capacity, it means your acquisition phase has ended. It might be a temporary pause that could be different for different individuals. It could be 6 months, it could be 2 years, but your acquisition phase as a whole usually lasts, depending on your age and goals, but should be lasting 5-10 years if you can.
I hear what you're saying. So like if,
even longer.
If everything stops after wherever it's 1, 2, 3, however many purchases, don't go, okay, it's done. It's like, all right, you might need to take a knee for a year or two, but then like find out how can I go again? Yeah,
exactly. It's a marathon, right? So it's a marathon. So once you are tired, you don't stop, right? You just probably slow or you stop for a bit, but then take a breather and then start running again. It's property building is again like marathon. So you have to run the entire marathon to be able to win that, right? So yeah, it's very similar.
And you're running again now or are you taking a knee?
I have to because I think I'm getting out of breath again. Yeah. But I would be, but it's not done. I think I'm not even half done. When I started my portfolio, I didn't know I'll be coming this far. So at this stage, I don't know how far I plan to go, but I'm always looking for next one.
What do you reckon it's going to be? Like if you and I sit in front of each other in like 5 years time, 2030, what do you reckon we're going to be talking about?
Even I think in the next 2 to 3 years, my aim is to be touching 20 mil.
20 mil.
In 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
2 to 3. Okay.
Yeah. That is what I'm targeting. I don't know how. So I'll work on how.
Just keep going to the next one. The next one.
Just next one. I'm just focusing on the next one. one. I just need to be mindful of my LVR position. At the moment, it is sitting under 60%.
So it's healthy.
So I just don't want it to be touching 70s or 80s, right? So I just need to be conscious of that. So I need to be acquiring again the assets which have got capital growth potential as well as some decent cash flow for me to be able to hold and sustain that asset.
What's the action step for everyone, Rohit, if they've really been inspired by this?
Yep.
Because the thing I like about your story, and we didn't even touch on this, like about you coming from India, you're not the typical rags to riches story. You were the doing well to I can do better.
Yep.
Like you left a comfortable life.
Yep.
And you told me the story off air of giving your son a kiss goodbye and getting on a plane without the rest of your family. Like I'm about to leave for Melbourne for a week. I don't even like the idea of being away from Fred for a week. And you sacrificed, man. Like there must be other people out there that are listening to this that are really connecting with what you've gone through, the highs, the lows, that want to scale the way that you have. What's the action step they can put into place now, man?
For me, I think the biggest aspect is fulfillment, right? So if you are fulfilled in what you are doing and you are happy with what you have got, then yeah, you don't need to do anything. You've got the nirvana, right? So people say, man, why are you looking at properties, right? So I said, man, I probably want to do better. That is what I'm wanting. So I'm probably still not fulfilled what I'm wanting to do. So if you are fulfilled, man, that is the stage where I want to get to, right? And what I feel is like real estate gives you that early choices in life.
The options.
Yeah. The options in life where you can actually build a portfolio on the sidelines while you don't need to leave your current job or your self-employed professional, even if it is, understand it may not be fulfilling. And while you're working in there, you can continue to park your money or savings and take benefits of leverage and then start investing in property where at some point in time, if you're doing it correctly, can give you that cushion for you to be able to have choices in your life. Like it could be a choice of working part-time down the track. It could be a choice of changing your professions. It could be choice of one of the two working professionals just leaving their work to focus on family. It could be anything. It could be travel. So yeah, real estate will give you choices early in life. And the good part about real estate investing is that it is a very good tax effective way to build your wealth. And the action step that I would recommend anyone is, it might look daunting that somebody might have created $12 million portfolio or 15 or 100, right? Like, but my action step for anyone should be that they should be looking at the next one purchase. Next one. That is what I'm always doing from my day one until this point. I never knew that I'll be coming this far, but again, I don't know how far I'll be going, but always striving for one more. You're also not comparing yourself with others, right? I'm always comparing with where I was a year ago.
You said that off air before, man. I think it gets thrown around all the time, but it's so easy to forget that, especially in this space.
Yeah.
If you're starting at zero and you look at someone with a $2-3 million portfolio and it's like, oh wow, and then you get to 2 or 3 and then you're like, oh, but that person's got 5 or 10. But where were you a year ago? And if you keep comparing yourself to where you were a week ago, a day ago, or whatever,
that is correct,
and you're moving forward, that's the win.
That's gratitude. You are already winning. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so don't compare yourself to others and just look at the next one. So
100%.
2 action steps. I love it, man. So actually almost lunchtime. I think it's past lunchtime. So you and I should go out for a bite to eat anyway. But I need to ask you, Rohit Gehlot, what is your favorite pizza?
It's Chicken Supreme.
Chicken Supreme. You getting this anywhere special or is this make it at home with your wife?
Nah, we just buy it. My wife cannot make it. She is not into non-vegetarian cooking. So yeah.
Is your wife's veggie?
Yeah, she's a vegetarian. She does chicken cooking, but yeah, not
really.
Pizza.
Yeah, okay. I'm like a pretenditarian now. I was vegetarian for like 15 years, but I've started eating fish the past couple of years.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, but my wife, she eats meat. So yeah, chicken pizza is actually her favorite. So Chicken Supreme, and you're going out for this. You're not cooking at home. You want to give a shout out to a local pizza bar that you'd go to?
So yeah, the local Domino's, because it's in close proximity. It opens until late. Like if I have got a craving at 10 p.m., I can easily go and buy or order.
I gave a shout out to Oasis Pizza recently, and someone actually commented, I can't remember where it was, they're like, if you like Oasis, you got to try this other one. The other like nice pizza places around us. So like happy to always give Domino's a shout out, especially when it's the gluten-free option, man. But so your story, Rohit, for anyone coming to Australia, for anyone that's been living in Australia their entire life, they're starting with nothing and they're wanting to build a portfolio. You've set a stage of inspiration of just continue to move forward. And I think the thing that's the underlying part of it that we're not really talking about with you is the removal of doubt. I was kind of waiting for these like, oh, I'm not sure about this. I don't know how to do it. Like this is not even in your tone. It's not even in your persona. And I think this is one of the most important things, that if you can continue to educate yourself exactly the way that Rohit did, books, podcasts, like groups, chats, whatever it is, get into as much information as you can so you can remove all of those feelings of, oh, but what if everything falls over? And kind of like you said before as well, it's like, okay, well, if everything goes and like if you died having like an almost near death experience, it's like, who cares? You're dead then anyway. Like it's
true.
It's done.
The biggest risk is not taking any risk.
So true. Rohit, thank you so much for your time, man, and sharing your story.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for having me.